Hey, welcome back for another edition of the Rice Football Blue and Gray preview show. Your eyes do not deceive you. I have swapped out co-hosts for the other half of the broadcast booth. I'm Matthew Bartlett, director of the Roost, joined this week by Nate Griffin, still getting over the high of a Bayou bucket win. How's it going, sir?
Hey man, it's a lot of fun. I'm having a blast this week because on the morning show I get a chance to talk to people and run all kinds of sound bites, if you will. And when you listen to those sound bites, there's really a secret behind all of them that they're not telling us. So it's been a whole lot of fun this week. Got to be honest with you, Matt.
Yeah, so in lieu of JP Heath, he's out doing something productive, I'm sure,
Yeah,
leaving us yahoos to drive the ship for this week. But we're gonna
right.
do a couple things. I want to. Usually, we don't spend a lot of time on last week, but this week we're gonna cheat a little bit, and we're gonna spend a little bit of time on the Houston game because of how significant it was, and we're gonna talk a little bit of Texas Southern as well. So, first things first, walk me through your internal emotional roller coaster sitting in the
Well,
booth on Saturday, because there's things that you can say that end up on the broadcast, and then there's what's going on in your mind that you can't say, or
no,
maybe shouldn't.
no question about it. First of all, I want to say thanks to JP for allowing me to join you today, and thank you for having me. This is a lot of fun. You guys do a phenomenal job on the show. Look, first of all, I'm sitting there as usual, and the most important thing for me to do is stay out of JP's way. When he's making the call, don't say anything, don't scream, don't holler, don't do anything, don't go nuts, don't go get in his face. I told you. Don't do any of that stuff. Just stay out of the way and let him make the call. And his call was absolutely on the money. He was able to turn the turn the corner with a dime and leave some change. And I tell you what, the way the Rice Owls played that evening, that Saturday evening, they wanted it. They wanted it a little bit more, and I think U of H knew it. When you start out leading a team 28 points, they don't know what hit them. You got something special. All you really have to do is close it out. And my emotions went from, can we beat this team? I feel like we can beat this team, to we can definitely beat this team. All we have to do is just keep playing the way Mike Bloomgren wants to play. And Marcus Tuiasosopo called a brilliant game. So did Brian Smith. Brian Smith, defensive coordinator, Marcus Tuiasosopo, the offensive coordinator. They were just phenomenal on Saturday night with their play calling. So I got to be honest with you, Matt. It was a wonderful thing to watch from the start to the finish. And JP with the call, that put the seal on it.
Yeah, and I was kind of trying to remember, after the fact, because in the moment, right, every win is the best win ever, and you're on cloud nine, and everything is great. But seeing Mike Bloomgren like walking around with the bucket and recreating the Dana Holgerson picture afterwards, that was great. But kind of putting all those things together, this has got to be the most significant win that's happened in this stadium since they won the conference championship. Is that fair?
Yeah. See, I go back to 2000, when was that? 11 and 12, when we beat Kansas, back-to-back years, when, you had a guy there who was kicking pretty good for the Rice Owls, who now is with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, that guy could kick. And both of those were walk-off wins. And so I go back to that. I also go back to 2008, when they went 10-3 with Chase Clement at quarterback, James Casey wide receiver, and Jared Dillard. Also, the win geez, I'm drawing a blank here, but when you look at some wins on the road, how they were able to put some wins on the road and get it
That's
done.
some big
So
ones on the road.
yeah,
Yeah.
some big ones on the road. So when you consider that, there's a whole lot of things that I've seen over the years. That was a huge win. I think that win was probably one of the biggest I know since Mike Bloomgren has been the head football coach, and certainly a win for the ages, because we hadn't won, the Bayou Bucket in quite some time. But to do it in the fashion that they did it, it was simply tremendous. And I was so happy for him that they got it done, because he's poured his heart into this team. And when you look at how they've recruited over the years, they've just been waiting for the fruits of those recruits to come through, and finally they did.
Yeah, and let's talk table setting a little bit, because this is
Yeah.
interesting, because the team, they got to say, we're on to Texas Southern, we're going 1-0. They got to say that, right? but we can cheat. We can look ahead at the season and kind of paint big picture. You go into the year and it's the first year in the American Conference, and much is made about how they want to put their best foot forward, right? When you get a win like this, we've heard this same coaching staff, Bloomgren, talk about wanting to go bowling, wanting to contend for conference championships. This is now entering year 6. How much credibility do we now get to ascribe to those goals after we see, and I think Bloomgren said it, this wasn't the best possible game they could play. It was really good. They won. It was an epic victory. But how much kind of stock do we get to put into the rest of the season and say, man, now you take care of business, you beat Texas Southern. This is kind of the trajectory that you could be on.
Well, first of all, I think if you look at Mike Bloomgren, the way he carries himself now, the way he handles press conferences, you can tell that his confidence is at an all-time high. He knows what kind of a team he has. He knows the work that he's put in to get the team that he has right now. He knows the work that he's put in to get the coaching staff that he has right now. And the most important thing is that he's been able to keep his coordinators. That's really what's key. But if you look at him, if you listen to him during his press conferences, if you listen to him at practice, if you listen to him when you talk with him now, there's a different level of confidence in his team and what he's doing. He is so certain about how good this team really is. Just listen to him talk. Yesterday, he said, if we play the kind of football that we can play in every game, there's not many people who can beat us. In fact, he said, there's no one who can beat us. And based on what I saw in 2 games against Texas and then against the University of Houston, his credibility in my mind was already good. All it's done since beating the University of Houston last Saturday like they did is skyrocketed to a completely different level. Because now I understand Texas goes into Alabama. Okay, Alabama's ranked number 4. They beat Alabama at Alabama. You don't do that very often. Texas hadn't done it in a long time. So when you go into Alabama and you beat Alabama, that kind of tells me what kind of a team you are. Now, go back to 2 weeks ago when Rice went to Austin, played Texas, and gave them everything they could in the first half. Texas only scored 13 points in the first half. So that tells you that the defense, the 1s, the 2s, and the 3s, everybody sort of got, some action. We know the 1s and the 2s carry the defense for the most part. But what we were able to see is just how good that defense was, and we saw the transition from that game to the University of Houston game, just how good the defense was. All we needed to see was how good the offense could perform, and they certainly performed to the level that we thought they could perform, except in the second half. Could have been a little bit better. But I think in regards to your credibility question, the question of credibility, we don't have to ask it anymore. It's already been answered.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about the offense and the quarterback, kind of what we saw. I want to unpack this a little bit, and then we can kind of move and look a little bit ahead. But, watching the game, Rice goes up 28-0. It's the early portions of the second quarter, and we're like, okay. And then there's nothing, zero, not a points from the 26 minute of the game into the second quarter until overtime. Rice actually gets outscored 35-0 in a row, and they win, which is, they might be the first FBS team to do that. They're on a very short list if they have, but you come back, and at the end of the day, you need points. You hand the ball to your, journeyman, veteran, whatever adjective you want to describe him, quarterback, who he's supposed to be the guy, right? He's supposed to be the guy that says, hey, win us the football game. And he goes, I think 4 for 5, 2 touchdowns, extra point in overtime. How much of the confidence that Bloomgren has stems from the guy pulling the trigger, and what have you kind of seen? Has he been as advertised? He had expectations, but what have you seen from JT Daniels? What do you see on Saturday, and how excited does that make you?
Well, let's go back to his high school career. First of all, he played at Mater D out there in Irvine, California. We know who played at Mater D, right? Bryce Young, who was a starter at Alabama, and now he's with the Carolina Panthers. That kind of tells you the kind of player that JT Daniels is. So this guy has played at nothing but P5 schools until he comes to Rice. What we saw Saturday night was a great indication of how great he can be. That wasn't his best game, obviously. No, the interception, it kind of put a dark cloud on things, and we saw a couple of other things. But I think for the most part, this guy has shown who he is, who he can be as advertised. And Matt, you and I deal with him every day in practice, so I think you can kind of see he doesn't get overwhelmed by anything. He's not a guy who you can stir up. And so that's one of the things I look to see. How emotional is a guy? Is a guy very emotional? Because the way he is around you is probably what he's going to be around his teammates and what he may be in the huddle. I see none of that. All I see is calm, cool, and collective. I actually tried to stir him up during our pregame interview that we did, going into the Texas game. You know me, I got some shenanigans in me now. I try to stir people up a little bit.
You got flatlined.
Yeah, it did not work, and here I'm using all the tools of the trade to try to get it, and it just did not work. So I can see, he's got a bit of a laid back sort of Cali personality. Anyway, I can say that because I was born in California, but he's got that laid back Cali personality. Now dial it down another 200 decimals, and that's who he is. You better have a good joke if you want him to laugh. So I can tell you right now, he's not the kind of guy you can stir. Yeah, you better have a good one if you want him to laugh.
You got me thinking now. New goal of the season. Can I get JT to laugh?
If you really want him to laugh, you better have a very, very good joke because he is really, really cool, calm, and collective. And behind all of that cool, calm, and collective is a very, very smart young man. This is a guy who is a master at calling out his protections while he's on the line. And we heard a little bit of that yesterday in the press conference. You had an offensive lineman there talking about how good he is at being able to pick up where the blitz is going to come from. Where's the pressure? That's what JT Daniels does. He finds the pressure. And once you understand how you need to protect yourself, how you need to protect the run, how you need to understand where the pressure is coming from, then you know where to go with the ball and when to deliver it. So those things are very, very important. JT Daniels does all of that. That's the kind of coach that Mike Bloomgren is. Came to us from Stanford, offensive line coach, offensive coordinator. He understands all of that. He knows what a good quarterback is. He's seen it with pros, all those things. So yeah, he's the guy, and certainly he's as advertised.
And can I like sneak one little thing in here and just something as I watch, him play and the weapons he's working with, right?
Yes.
The guys, we know Luke McCaffrey, right? He has the Sports Center top 10 moment, like dude's a superstar. We get it. But you look at the rest of the roster, Braylon Walker, he played, I can count on my hand, maybe his 5th college football game on Saturday. Giovanni Johnson is playing his first season, seeing the field on Saturdays as a wide receiver. Rawson McNeil had a big catch. You look at, we're still waiting to see Landon Ransom. You go down the list. These are all really, really young dudes. Dean Connors is getting, a starter's workload for the first time in his career. They're fresh starts. You look on defense, JoJo Jean, first year safety, second year here, but makes the big play. You have all of these young dudes, and they're able to do this in week 2.
Yeah. Well,
we got 10 more games, man.
I think that lends itself to the credibility of the staff as they go out to recruit players. First of all, when I was playing college football at Southern Miss, freshmen didn't play. That was a long time ago. And so what they had to be able to do was get acclimated to the college game. One of the biggest fears of a young freshman player, particularly receivers, because we're built different, at least we were built differently, weren't big as tight ends, is the hit. The hit is the thing that you fear the most, especially from the upperclassmen. You have to learn how to take a hit in college. So that's why you see a lot of high school players, once they go to college, they get that extra 15, 20 pounds of muscle. They bulk up, and when they go home, the parents don't know them. So that's usually what the case is. This particular case now, these guys are coming in, and Ransom came in early. So he got a chance to really work on his body, work on his speed, work on his technique, understand routes and how to run them. Also, being able to work with a guy like JT, you understand how you need to run that route in favor of. And a lot of times when you're running, for instance, I'll give you an example. A lot of times when you're running a go route, you got to know if you can beat that corner. If you can't beat that corner, you should have some kind of synchronization with that quarterback to know, stop. This is going to be a back shoulder throw. So instead of maybe getting 50, 60, or a touchdown, you get 20 or 30, and it's a first down. So those kinds of things are really, really critical to understand, especially as young players. Those are the kinds of things that you learn in the offseason from the big guys. We call JT Daniels the big guys because, he has been around a little bit, right? So he's the big guy in that offense, and you ask him a ton of questions. That's what the young players do. They want to get better, ask questions, do what the big guy says do, and you will be extremely successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're going to see more from him this coming week. And, maybe this is Lander Ansom's going to get involved. I'm calling it now. It's going to be a fun one. Let's talk Texas Southern a little bit. And this one's interesting because you go look at the game at Rice Stadium 2 years ago when Texas Southern was here. Man, it was not boring. It was, I don't know if you can call it a shootout, but that was a game that you didn't really feel quite comfortable until the final whistle sounded. 48-34, I believe, final score there. Texas Southern quarterback Andrew Body. I don't know if that was his first start. Might have been his second. He was very
that was
early.
His first start.
Yeah, into his college career, and he looked fantastic. So do we have some familiarity there where we get another interesting one, or is this an opportunity where you kind of say, all right, we've grown up, this is a better football team, a deeper football team at South Bend, and this is a game that we should handle a little bit more prepared maybe than we were 2 years ago?
The answer is B. That's not good. What you saw last time, you're not going to see that again. This team is very well prepared for every game now. This team is very disciplined. The corners are so much better. In fact, I kind of want to go back to Callahan and Gaines, the 2013 team that won the conference championship. That's how good this team can be. They're not quite that good yet. I heard a comment on Saturday, we can be as good or better than the 2013 team. Gotta wait a little bit on that one. That 2013 team was really, really good. That's probably one of the best Rice teams ever come through here. So if you want to accomplish, greatness at that level, there's some things you're going to have to do. You're going to have to beat some teams that no one thinks you can beat. So you basically have to run through your schedule. You can't play with Texas Southern. Right now, I think they're hurting a little bit. I'm not quite sure if we're going to see the real Andrew Body. I know last week he didn't play. So if he did play, he didn't play very much. And they were beaten soundly, 71-3 on the road. And that's very, very unfortunate that they had to take that sort of beating. But that's what happens when you don't have an Andrew Body on the field who can obviously take the air out of the ball, and make some defenses kind of fly around a little bit, make them wonder. I tell you what, when he's healthy, he is a phenomenal player when he's healthy. But I don't know if we're going to see a healthy Andrew Body. And even if he was healthy, against this defense, I really don't know if he'll be able to sustain. Because if the Rice Owls come out and play 60 minutes of quality football, if they give you two halves of the first half from last week, it won't even be close, Matthew. And I think early we'll start to see the twos and the threes come out. I've been to a couple of Texas Southern practices. Clarence McKinney is a mastermind offensively. As you well know, he started as the head coach at Yates, went to University of Houston, worked under Kevin Sumlin as the offensive coordinator, left and went to A&M with Kevin Sumlin as his offensive coordinator, soon to be moved to running backs coach. And then he left there and went to Arizona with Kevin Sumlin. So this is a guy who's been to some really, really big time programs. In fact, all those programs I just named where he went, they were P5 programs. So this is a guy who knows how to coach. It's a matter of being able to surround the quarterback with really, really good talent. They have good talent, but right now, it's not a whole lot of teams that are going to be better than Rice, particularly in the I just don't believe it. And they've already beaten one P5 school, and that's University of Houston. So look out.
Yeah, I think the differentiator here, and you can kind of you see the jump, right? Because you think back to the last time or the first game of the Mike Bloomgren era is a walk-off field goal over Prairie View A&M when talent for talent, pound per pound, the Rice roster looked more like an FCS roster than it does right now. And you jump ahead, they played McNeese last year, and that was a 42-point win. It was the largest win of the Mike Bloomgren era. And I think what you're looking at, and you hit it with getting in the 2s and 3s, like, man, when you go to the 2s on this team now, a lot of these 2s are better than some of the 1s that were on that 2018 team.
Yes,
And you
absolutely.
have some 3s. You have some 3s that could make an argument. You got, I mean, Dalen Alexander is the scout team running back in practice during the weeks and scores 3 touchdowns last week.
Heck,
kid might be all right.
Is JoJo Jean a starter? Is JoJo Jean a starter?
I mean, he is a starter now.
I mean, look at that. I mean, you look at guys, one guy gets hurt, it's not that big a deal. Remember, the depth hasn't always been there for Mike Bloomgren. That's one of the fights he's had to deal with, not having the kind of now he's got the depth. So you mix up the depth with the level of talent. This is right where you need to be. And by the way, I don't know if you've taken a look at the coaching staff or not. Looks like those guys have been in the weight room too. So, I mean, they not only want to look, like an AAC team from the standpoint of having the players that look like AAC players, they also have coaches that look like, in fact, you could take it to P5 level and say they look like P5 level coaches. They just happen to be coaching in the American Athletic Conference. So they look good too, along with players.
Yeah, and I mean, we can look through some of these. A couple of guys that I kind of do a little bit of look forward. You got Jaron Johnson, tight end, for them that's leading them in receptions. So a big body tight end hadn't been super featured by either the first 2 opponents Rice has faced. So that'll be kind of a new challenge to see how that chess max works. And then their leading wide receiver, Quade Davis, 5'11", 211 pounds. So a bit of a smaller guy, but got some compactness to his frame. It'll be interesting to see how the defense kind of plays out against them. And then, I mean, they've had a bunch of guys end up racking up stats on the defense because that's what happens when you end up playing that many snaps across the first 2 games they've played. But you hit on something that I think is interesting. If we're kind of landing the easy enough for me to say, landing the plane here with a couple X factors, things that we need to see from this Rice team on Saturday. I think the first thing is I want to see them not beat themselves, because in the second half against Houston, something I noticed, and you kind of felt like the trepidation as it's going, like, oh man, everything's going wrong. But you go back and kind of watch that second half with the offense in particular. I want to start with, you have a dropped pass, you have a fumble, and you have basically a missed cutback on a third down run, where all 3 of those drives stopped in the third, fourth quarter. Those critical drives were, man, you feel like you get literally one more point and the game is over. It's fundamental errors of not being where you're supposed to be, or not making the catch, or not making the right read. And if you can get a team, because we saw the talent level, they went pound for pound, they beat them in the trenches.
Yes.
But can you play consistently? Because if you can do that, if you can show me that on snap 1 to snap 70, you can be the same football team, then I'm going to start believing that, yeah, there's nobody on the schedule that you can't beat. Because that's the missing piece so far that we've seen from the Mike Bloomgren era. We've seen the highs. They beat an undefeated number 15 Marshall team on the road. We've seen the highs. It's, can we get rid of the low points where you just have a quarter where you're not batting 1,000? What do you think?
Yeah, that's part of it.
What's the one thing?
That's part of it, the mentality, the consistency. But what I think we saw with the win and Rice being able to come back and score those points in overtime, that's what you saw. It was getting over the hump. Oftentimes, when players get down and when teams get down, coaches have a hard time getting them to refocus and thinking to themselves, we can score, tie the game, and we can still win it with a 2-point conversion or with the PAT. They somehow forgot how they got to 28 points or 37 points or whatever it was. It's like, guys, we can still do this, in overtime, and we can overcome objectives. We can overcome our own. The biggest problem oftentimes in a game, Matt, is overcoming your own mentality. And the one thing that Coach Bloomgren said during the press conference, he said, we were our worst enemy in the second half. We almost beat ourselves. So you don't want to do that. Sometimes you can overthink it. I know players oftentimes overthink their roles, and you don't have to do that. That's one of the things that C.J. Stroud, the Houston Texans, and I know I'm throwing something else in there, a little loop in there, but the one thing that the coaches say about him or said about him when he first got there is don't overthink it. Don't just go out and play. And that's what you should do. If you don't overthink what you should be doing. And that's why JT Daniels is going to be so great this year. And I'm going to be a prognosticator and stand behind him 100%. He is going to be great this year because he doesn't overthink it. He doesn't get emotional. I talked about emotions earlier, remember? He doesn't get emotional. He doesn't overthink it. He's going to be the guy who's going to stay right here. You'll never have to worry about where he is emotionally. And if he does that and does the other things that it takes to win, he is going to be a guy who will do some big things here while only being here for a year. And that'll really be a shame.
Yeah, can we hold on to him? I'll take as long as I can get of him. But yeah, it's going to be fun. We'll have hopefully another JT show coming up this week, and the rest of the Owls. I'm excited. I know, let's see, a couple of last minute housekeeping things. We got some practice notes going on, patreon.com/@theroost. You've been out there with me, Nate. You've seen, man, they got a lot of fun stuff during the week before we get out there. Teams looking healthy. And then I know you got the broadcast feed, and I want to remind folks about this if they don't know, because this was so fun to watch the final call. You ducking and weaving with Bob Schlager, making sure you don't get an eye taken out during the celebration. So you can actually watch Nate, JP, the whole gang call the game, which I don't know. It's worth the price of admission. If I'm not going to be there, that's where I want to be.
Yeah, it's so much fun, man, in the booth, especially with Bob, because Bob's hands are just flailing. He's going all over the place. I'm trying to stay away from him, like I got the Heisman pose. I'm trying to do the Heisman pose away from Bob, man. And Bob is all over the place. And you got to love his emotion. He loves this team. He loves this program. He loves being in the booth with us, and we love having him in there. But the job that JP does when he's calling the game, JP during the game is almost like JT during the game. You can't move. Now I can move him. I know how to move and shake him. Okay, I know how to do. I've been working with him. I've been working with the big fella for 12 years. But it took a while for him to get like that. He was the kid who came into the booth, and I looked at him and I said, "Oh boy, here we go." Now all of a sudden, about 6 years later, you could see he was starting to feel his Wheaties, and now his bowl is full every time he comes to work, and it's so good to sit there and call a game with him. It is so much fun, man, and the things that we can do and say during the course of a broadcast, we actually get away with. I'm so happy. The FCC doesn't regulate us or anything, man, because we actually get away with a lot of the things. But it's better than a boring broadcast, and I think right now, this is the time for us to help sell the Rice House. If they went on the field, people need to understand how they won, and they need to be able to see it through our eyes and hear it in our voices. If they can't, we're not doing our jobs, man. And I gotta be honest with you. I love my job. You have no idea how much I love my job, but I love my job after 16 years. This is my 16th year. And I absolutely love calling Rice football, and so I wouldn't rather do anything else. I'm cool where I am, so it's fun working with JP, man. It's a blast.
I will say we have a little bit of treat this week because we got Taylor McCarg on the call for TV. So we're not going to be short shrift there. Maybe we'll talk him into saying something nice. I think we might get something there. So
I don't think it'll be a problem. You're talking about Taylor McCarg, his quarterback in his football team.
He might come dressed in his uniform to the game. There's like a 30% chance that happens.
Well, remember what happened to him when he went to Marshall and he hit his head against the turf, and then you had Dreyfus Jackson who had to come in and sub for him, and it was just amazing. Dreyfus got it done, but Taylor McCargan was a tremendous quarterback for the Rice Owls, and it's so good he's going to be able to call this game. We miss him a lot, especially as a player. He was a leader of that team. Oh yeah.
We got a lot of things going on, a lot of for y'all Rice fans to pay attention to. Thank you, Nate, for coming on. Make sure y'all tune in to the broadcast. Follow us along at the Roost with everything we got going on. Hit a new height of subscribers ever this past week. So thank y'all for that. It's been a fun ride. And man, we got 10 games left, man. We got so much more of this season. So that's it for now. We will be back next week talking about Texas Southern, and let's see, we got UConn next on the schedule, and then we'll be done with non-conference play. So it'll be fun, man. But we will see. We'll go from there. We'll see y'all next week. Rice Fight.